guys, welcome to the Upshot. This is a podcast for dads trying to get it right. My name is Kyle. I'm joined by my good friend Shane, and we like to have conversations to help other fathers learn how to become better dads. I want to invite you guys to text the word Upshot to 97000. You'll join our text list to receive more updates and communication about how we are continuing to evolve the Upshot and give you more and more resources here in 2024. And now, here is today's episode.
All right. Hey, welcome to the Upshot, episode 16, I believe.
Yeah.
And we're here, and I am not Shane Norcross, and that is because our little friend went to Canada and came back, and he got sick, and he lost his voice. Sounds like he's been smoking for decades, and he was unable to be here. So, unfortunately, you guys are left with me today.
I'm good with that.
And I'm kicking things off, but I'm sitting here. Usually I'm over there where Josh now is filling in. And I've also, been able to share on the podcast before, but excited to be here. And we are sitting here with Buck Giebelhaus. And I've never asked you this. Is it Giebelhaus or Giebelhaus?
Oh, well,
I've known you for 15 years.
Yeah, so the American version is house, and the German version is Haas.
Haas. And your voice
I
gets
just made
deeper.
that up.
Oh.
I have no idea.
All right, so Buck is a lead pastor of Northpoint Church, and that is where this podcast originates from, is from Northpoint, and run by all people who serve and work at Northpoint. And so Buck has been lead pastor there from the beginning, 2009, when the church launched. And I met Buck in 2009 when I walked into Northpoint, and I emailed him, and he never got back to me. And but Buck has mentored me and really been my only boss in my life, which is pretty crazy, apart from a couple reorgs that were short term. Mm-hmm. And Buck premarital counseling for me and my wife Ashley. He married us, been on the other side of Buck and Jill for a long, long time. So I'm very excited that we get to hang with Buck and talk to him about some of the discoveries he's made along his journey of fatherhood and husband and being a pastor and all sorts of things. So Buck, thank you for being here.
You got it, man. Excited to be here. And you're also on the other side of my children, which is kind of unique now.
Yeah.
And you're mentoring one of my sons and his,
Which is crazy,
sweet.
too. Like, to say I'm mentoring one of your sons is wild, too, because he's like a foot and a half taller than me. So anytime I'm talking to him in the foyer, we're talking about, like, something serious, I'm looking straight up in the air. Yeah.
Well, he's a tall fella.
He is. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
How do we normally start, Jeremy? With a dad moment? Yep. And, anybody want to jump in with a story they want to share?
Dad moment. Buck, do you got one?
Like any kind of dad moment?
Any special dad memory you have?
Or it can be funny. Like, mine's pretty funny today that I'll share.
Well, I mean, it's so recent. Like, for me, a dad moment is my son Luke. He's been at Texas Tech. He came home. He decided he didn't want to go back to Texas Tech, so he wants to stay home. He's like, college is not for me, Dad. And I'm like, all right. So, there's this little fear inside of me, and like, what about his future? Did he just ruin his whole, that kind of rises up. But I think it's a great decision, and he got a job at State Farm Insurance. So shout out for State Farm.
There you go.
I don't know if they're good or not.
Sponsor us.
And we're going to break for a commercial right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So hopefully seems like they're a good insurance company. And then he's been driving this a car that he got when he was 16 that his grandparents bought for him. And he if you know Luke is he's challenged when it comes to vehicles and roads and staying on them. And so this car has so much love and just detail of like side panels that have been replaced. The suspension is to the degree to where a mechanic told him, hey, it's not safe to even drive any longer. So the story is that he's been saving and he's been thinking about this, and and he went and he bought a Tesla.
Nice.
Did he really?
2 days ago.
Nice.
And I did not know how affordable Teslas are. Not to say they're super cheap. So I just want to.
But relative to like the perception that
Model
it's like
3 or whatever?
Like a Toyota Corolla, a Honda, Accord, whatever, like in that realm. Like there's a Tesla.
Did he get the little one, the Model 3?
Yeah, the Model 3.
Yep.
And so he went and got it, and he was so excited. And, like, you know, just being there, watching him sign the paperwork. It was his first car he's ever bought, big decision. You know, they checked his credit, and this was like a big moment where he's been working on his credit and all that kind of stuff. So it was such a cool dad moment because we're driving home. He's driving his new Tesla, and he's so excited, and you can see, and he said, Dad, like, it's been a while since I really am excited about the future. I'm excited about, like, you know, what God has in store. There's so much to look forward to, and there was just so much wind in his sails. And as a dad, I'm sitting there just going like, man, thank you, God. Like, this is just that moment, that little micro moment you get in parenting where you're just like, gosh, this is awesome. If we could just savor this as long as possible. So, and I got to drive a Tesla too.
Yeah. Thank you, God. And thank you, Elon Musk, for designing a really cool car.
Yeah. So,
and making it affordable now.
Yeah, it's far more affordable than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I realized that you started talking that you didn't share on, or I didn't set you up for how many children you have. And I think there's maybe a dad moment just to be shared in the sequencing of how you had all of your children.
Yeah.
Can you share that story, like briefly, that story?
Yeah, so it's a weird thing because it doesn't make sense the way I say it. So Jill and I, we have 5 sons, and I wouldn't recommend having 5 sons. I think that's way too many children, personally. That's just my personal opinion. But we have 5, and I love all 5 of them, and I'm not going to give them back. You know, it's not like we're done with 2 of them. But so we had 3 boys. We were really content, talking about, hey, you know, I think this should be it. I think we're finished, and the whole, you know, that has implications specifically for me. And I was delaying. And then all of a sudden Jill's like, hey, I'm pregnant. And she was pregnant with twin boys. And so, boom, at the end, we got 5.
Yep.
And so they're amazing. And their ages are, Sam is 21. Luke is 20. Timbo, or Timothy as he likes to be called, he is 19. And our twin boys are 15. And they're about to get cars and drive and do those kind of things. So all that's about
your HOA is going to be so mad.
Oh, they're already, like, we have so many fines right now.
Yeah. Because of all the cars in your...
Oh, my gosh. And just boys. They just don't understand HOAs and, like, how important they are.
Yeah. That's wild. Well, I also think that one of the craziest things about, like, y'all having 5 was when you had 3, you were starting Northpoint, and, like, the number one piece of advice you got was, like, don't get pregnant. And then you got pregnant with twins on top of your, I guess, how old were, I don't know. I guess you had, Sam was 6 when you started Northpoint. So you already had a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And then got pregnant with twin boys. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was mayhem.
Right.
Yeah. My mind's a little blown by that.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's those moments in life, especially like parenting, where you do it. You don't know how you did it. You can't really look back and quantify it and go like, here's the playbook or any. You just did it. You know, we were just there.
You woke up every day and you
put one foot in front of the other and said, okay, whatever. You know, and it was definitely mayhem. Jill was on bed rest for several months before.
Before having twins?
Yeah. And so she had the twins in October. We started Northpoint in November. And then I remember just, looking, here's my 5 kids. Here's Sam. He's, 6 years old. He just turned 6 in October. So he was 6 years old. And they're all little and running around. And I was like, there are days it's amazing. And days I'm like, again, way too many kids.
Yeah. When I really think about that, I just get like, how?
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. You just don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Yeah.
Kyle, you want to do your...
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking here, a couple of shows ago, like episodes, maybe March, we had a guy come on and he talked about like he's got 2 daughters, got Chris. He came on and talked about 2 daughters and he have like these dates with his kids that, they'd go to get coffee every week together or whatever, and that turned into a really meaningful thing for him. And I just got thinking about that story because, a couple weeks ago, it was a weekend, Jess wasn't feeling well. She had some stuff going on, so I had a house showing I had to go do for work. And kids were being kind of nutty, so I'm like, y'all are just coming with me. And so I don't know if this is a good or bad idea. Told my clients beforehand, I have got some not rugrats, but I've got some preschoolers with me. They're going to help show the house. So they came with me, and, actually, like, I should take them around more because clients treat me better. Like, they're like, oh, we love your kids, and you're like, yeah, great. There's a buffer here. And anyways, they did a great job, like, turning on all the lights on the house for me and having fun exploring or whatever. But then afterwards, we, like, went by, I was trying to give Jess some more time to just hang out. And so we're like, hey, we're going to go by Red Horn. And Maggie's in this phase where she loves chips and queso. So we got some queso and get Lucy a taco.
It's a long phase to be in.
I mean, the rest of her life here. Yeah.
You mean she's a human?
She sits there and will dip every chip, like three bites to a chip. So it's her queso.
So she's a triple dipper.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh man. And then it's like she will devour the queso. And I don't know if this is not really a funny story, but it was a fun day in that, like, they went to work with me, and then we just got to hang out. We don't hang out in public very often, the three of us, and teaching them how to operate in a public setting. Like, hey, you need to order. Can you order your food? And getting her to, like, speak up loud enough to where the lady can hear her order, and, like, it's just a really fun, memorable moment. And they have games there, so we played we played. What is the one where you're guessing the people?
Guess who?
Guess who? They are horrible at that game. And then we tried some Uno, and then the evening finished when Lucy grabbed the chessboard and was like, we're going to play chess. She's 3. And I'm like, okay, well, you're going to move the little horses around and whatever. And within like 30 seconds of having the chessboard out on the table, a fight ensued between the two of them about how to play the game. And Lucy, like, we're talking about emotions today, feelings, like, she feels everything. And everybody in that entire place, it's like this big warehouse, right? It echo chamber, knew Lucy was pissed about how Maggie was playing chess. And so, like, we took her out, twice, like, outside. I'm just trying to get the chessboard cleaned off and, like, the table cleaned and get out of this place. And everybody's like, I'm like, anybody want to help me? Or no, nobody's helping. Anyways, it was fun. But it ended with a big emotional blow up. And, we'll try again in like a couple months. So it's all good.
There you go.
We know.
Yeah.
I
Jess
know.
had
like,
a great time at home.
And Mom had plenty of time to rest. So it was great. Yeah.
Wow.
That's cool.
It's fun. That's just our life right now, is trying things and seeing what the limits are. And then you learn and you just try again. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Mine is y'all had more serious ones. Mine's straight just funny, and self-deprecating, and
those are good.
Yeah, I think I kind of shared it with you a little bit. I think I've shared it with you too. But we have a friend. You guys know he's been on the podcast, Barry, and our boys just love Barry. And anytime they see him in the foyer, they run up to him and they're so excited. And then anytime Barry greets Grayson, he always greets him and says, "Hey, little man, how's it going?" Right? And it's just little man is his thing. And so probably a couple months ago, Grayson's almost 3, and he's starting to like share really well. I've been working on that. And he offered me a snack. And I was like, oh, I'd love a snack. Thanks, buddy. And I said, thank you. And just like without even looking at me, he just said, you're welcome, little man. And for those of you who don't know, I'm like 5'5", and my wife is taller than me. And so it just like to hear your 2-year-old do that just cut a little deeper. Yeah. It was very humbling, very good, So that was my dad moment there.
Has he done it since? Like, is that stuck, or is that just the one-off? Like,
no, he probably saw my face and thought, man, that hurt Dad for some reason. I'll stay away from that topic for a while. Yeah.
It's man, our kids teach us far more in life and shape us and mold us and bring all that stuff out of us.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I heard that story and you telling it a second time, I laughed just as much.
Yeah. it's very, very good.
Yeah, it's great.
I'll probably be sharing that one.
Thank you for trusting us with that.
Yeah.
There's some trust there. Okay. Well, Buck, I would love to just ask you more of a personal question.
Sure.
As we jump into this whole thing. So the Upshot, this whole podcast, what we're trying to build here is really about helping men consider, like, what is our, you can say, purpose. Upshot is, the word means the eventual outcome of something, right? And so it's going to happen. There will be an outcome of whatever it is we do. And as fathers, like, we will have an outcome, so to speak, of our time as dads, and the influence we have on our children and our families and the people around us. And whether we influence that or not, or intentionally influence that or not, there will be outcomes to that. And so how do we consider that more deeply and thoughtfully, and consider how we can influence the trajectory of not only our lives, but also the people we care about and love, including our children. So that's the whole premise behind the term Upshot and what we're doing here. So as a guest today, I would love to ask you, invite you into like sharing, if you have something top of mind here, what has been your Upshot? What's kind of the goal or outcomes that you've been working on or driving towards, or that's motivated you as a dad in your life?
Well, I'll
take
say
that wherever you want to go.
Yeah, no, I think I'll take it from two places. So from my unhealthy version of me, to a degree, was the outcome of my kids are successful. The outcomes of my kids are strong. The outcomes of my kids are like handsome. The outcomes of my kids are influential. And I think so much of those were wrapped up in my insecurities, my ego, my pride. Like, hey, if they're successful, if they're going to do, then I'm going to feel really good about me, and I'm going to feel like, man, I'm an accomplished man. I have purpose, I have meaning, because look at my kids and how successful they are. And I'm not saying all of that's inherently wrong. I think there's a lot of good in that, but I was really attached to a parenting outcome of that. They must get, certain education, have certain income levels, have certain looks, be the star athlete, be the best in school, all this kind of stuff. And especially as a pastor, that's another weird added pressure. It's like, man, hey, I've got to lead my family so well, and if I don't, people are going to leave Northpoint, because look at, like, how can I lead Northpoint if I can't lead my family? And again, there's truth to that. Yeah. So I don't want to, run from that or abdicate my responsibility there. But there was so much more pressure on them, and so much more pressure. And so that's one area that I would just say, if I'm really honest, like, that's part of how I've parented. I think underneath that, and again, I'm a pastor, so you may go, well, of course, this is what a pastor will say, but I'll give you some reasons as to why. But a goal from the time they were born for me has always been to say, my ultimate aim as a father is to transfer the trust of my kids, my sons, from me to their Heavenly Father. Because for me, I think about the scriptures, I think about what Jesus said. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So if Jesus really is the way, if Jesus really is the truth, if Jesus really is the life, then my words, they're going to be impactful. My direction is going to be hopefully helpful. But the ultimate words are the words of Jesus. I think about where Peter, was on the other side of Jesus, and it was a really dramatic moment. And all these people are walking away from Jesus. And then Jesus looks at Peter and says, are you going to leave too? You going to walk away too? And Peter looks at him and says, to whom shall I go? I mean, you have the words of eternal life. Like, there's nothing better than you. So if I fundamentally believe that, which I do, and not just because I'm a pastor, that's in the depth of my soul, then my words, my wisdom, my ways, hopefully they're helpful. But there's someone far better than me that has better wisdom, better words, better advice, better direction. And that's the person of Jesus Christ. And so everything I'm trying to do is to go, hey, here's my 2 cents, but what do you think God thinks about this? Here's what I think, but what do you think God thinks? Here's my ways, here's how I would handle this, but would you be willing to invite God into that? Because ultimately, he's the one who will never leave you. He will never forsake you. His love is unfailing. His wisdom is supreme. I want you to go to him. And that's the ultimate goal for me, to go. If I can see all 5 of my boys to some degree, with their eyes fixed on Jesus and their hearts, just trusting in him more and more and more throughout their lives, that's the aim. Yeah. Then I know they'll be fine. So
that's awesome.
That's my Upshot.
Thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it resonates like a nightly prayer that we have with our girls. I haven't intended for this to happen, but part of it is like you find yourself like repeating kind of the same phrases or mantras or whatever. And one of them is, that they may grow in their trust every day, trust in him, in their father. And so I love that. I appreciate that. It's relatable.
Well, just the other day, like to live this out, one of my sons shared something with me that I think he's going to share with you at some point. And it was really hard for him. And he was nervous. And, I've asked my boys, like, why is it so hard for you to share things with me? Like, my dream is to be the safest place for you to share whatever. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to abandon you, like these kind of things. But there's always that kind of father to son or, child or a child to a father that I don't want to disappoint you is what they've reflected. So it's a lot of weight to go like, Dad, I've messed up. Dad, here's the things that are going on. And so my son was sharing this, and, I gave him some advice and gave him, I was like, here's what I would do, and, really affirmed him for sharing and all this kind of stuff. But I ended that conversation, and here's the practicality of that. I just said, listen, everything I shared with you, everything that Jeremy's going to share with you, everything there's another couple they meet with, they're going to share with you. It's probably all really good. I'm not saying don't listen to that. But I am saying, would you be willing to listen to what God would say about this situation, with your Heavenly Father and how he would lean into it? Because he's ultimately the one who knit you together in your mother's womb. He loves you far more than I could ever comprehend, and he's never going to forsake you. So would you just lean into him? And so that's like a practical outcome of like, hey, they're sharing something big. I want to be there, and be enough for my kids. But I know I'll never be enough for them. I'm a human. And so that was like, but I want to lead you to something even better than that. Yeah. And so hopefully, we'll see. It's in process right now.
Sure.
Who knows?
Love it.
Pretty cool. Was that within the place of grace?
A little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I took my son Jonathan, we went to Cracker Barrel. I don't know if you've ever taken your kids there, but it's great because you walk in and all the old kind of antique, nostalgic, all the old candy and candy bars.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jonathan's, he asked this way. He says, Dad, when you were alive, did you see?
You were alive.
I was like, son, I'm still alive. I'm right. I was like, but I'll play along, and I'm like, yeah, when I was alive, like we drank those old root beer bottles like that,
That's awesome.
And so it was great, but just having that conversation with him, and just I told him, hey, one of my dreams with you, Jonathan, is that regardless of how old you are, if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 15, I want to be the safest place in the whole world for you to share whatever it is that's going on in your life. And if I ever jeopardize that, if I say things or do things that get in the way of that, do you feel like you have the power to reflect that to me? And that was a question we had during breakfast. Because I just want, my personality is really strong, which means I can disempower my children because I have to be right. It has to be my way, is something that's not good inside of me. And so, there's a fear for them to reflect things to me. And there's a natural fear, I think, in that kind of, children to father. But it's that place of grace to go, man, if I really want to create that place, that I am the safest place in the world for them to go, Dad, how would you handle this? Or Dad, what do you think about this? Then, I've got to be willing to hear what it's like on the other side of me as a father, and invite that into the conversation and try to really empower them.
Yep. I think one of the things I've seen on the other side of you as you've, I guess, I don't know, just having known you for a long time, is over the years you've reflected your own journey with your dad and some of the things that transpired there and how it impacted the way you feel and your emotions and all of that. And I think, because that's one of the reasons why, as we were talking about, hey, there's this topic that's really important, and it's emotions as men, as fathers, and how that impacts our kids. And I had told these guys, like, I think we should talk to Buck about it because of your story and just how you're kind of transforming or discerning places of beginning to understand what it means to feel and why that's significant. And so I'd be curious to get us into the emotions side of thing. If you would maybe just start off by sharing a little bit of your journey with emotions as a man, as a dad, and kind of where you are today with that topic.
Yeah, I think, so I really have like two sides to that, if I heard the question correctly. There's one side that I have a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and a lot of regret. Part of my biggest regret in life, it has to do with parenting. And part of that has to do with how I handled emotions. And one side of that, I grew up in a home that, it wasn't safe to feel. It wasn't safe to invert my soul, invert my insides and say, hey, I'm scared, I'm nervous, I don't know what to do, I'm hurt. Like, that wasn't welcome in my home. So I learned how to shut that down, and eventually I believed something that's not true, and that's like, it's not safe to feel, and men don't feel. A strength of a man is not to feel. And if I can never feel again, I'll be safe, and I'll be strong and powerful. And so I parented from that perspective. I shut my boys down. I said many, many things when they were, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, in that range of parenting. Like, when they would cry, I'd say that's weakness. When they would show too much emotion, I'd say, like, stop acting like a girl. I would just, anything I could do to control their emotions, to say, don't feel. And what I didn't realize, which it kills me, is that I was projecting my trauma and my brokenness on my boys, thinking I'm doing the right thing. I'm showing them how to be a man. I was actually showing them how to be emotionally dead, because that's what I was. And then when my mom passed away and then my dad relationally walked away, that was the catalyst for me to get on the other side of somebody who goes, this is a comment my counselor would say, Buck, the only people who don't feel are in the morgue. You are designed to feel. To feel is to be alive. And I'm like, that is like hitting like a, this brick wall going, what? No, that's weakness. And then we would have conversations. I'm like, that's losing control. You can't lose control. I've got to be poised. I mean, I'm a pastor. I have to be so strong and powerful. I got to be in rooms. And she would reflect things like, Buck, like, as I hear you, I think it's interesting because you teach people about Jesus, but I'm not sure you'd really enjoy following him, because he was a fairly emotional guy and talked about, Jesus outside the tomb of Lazarus and like losing it, being very much in touch with grief and emotions and sadness and being able to articulate that and express that. Like for me, there's a little voice in my head that would be, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up. Like, men just don't do this. And I parented for, the first 10 years of my older sons' lives and a few years of my younger sons. That's the perspective I parented from. But then the best I can describe it is like the lights got turned on. I woke up and I found, if I'm ever going to be my truest version of myself, if I'm going to discover how God knit me together in my mother's womb, if I'm going to step into the most meaningful and purposeful and liberating expressions and experiences of my life, I've got to learn to feel and be in touch with that. And so there's like the second half of it is this journey I'm currently on and will be on the rest of my life. And that's just how to pay attention, how to acknowledge, how to emote, how to feel with my wife, how to feel with my sons, how to nurture those feelings in my sons, how to talk about those things. So that's been my journey, and it's definitely been really, there's been a dichotomy in that, like really extremes on both. I wouldn't say extremes, but pretty close on both ends.
Yeah.
No, I like it. I appreciate it. I think we were thinking about, like, what's the impact for fathers to become aware of their feelings. So I love that you just told your story, because you're displaying that, like, vulnerably here, or authentically, of like this journey you've been on where we're going to shut down our feelings. We're going to lean into a version of what we believe manhood is. And then a transition here, or I love the idea of like just turning on the lights, and now you're on a new journey. That's, you don't feel like you've arrived, like you're exploring, you're leaning into, you're learning. I'm thinking about the other guys who are listening today, or whenever they're listening, and I'm trying to help make sure that they're connecting dots. Like, so what would you say, either one of you? What's the impact that dads can have on our children here? And you related to this, but like I want to get there. What's the impact that we would have on our kids, in relation to how we connect with our own feelings or emotions? So that could be positive or negative. Like when we are connected or disconnected from our feelings, our emotions, what's the impact that can have on our kids and our families? What do y'all think?
I think, I mean, you shared some examples that, thanks for being vulnerable on the podcast too. I mean, those are, I know those carry an emotional weight with you today. That's really heavy. So I think, I don't know, I just, in my experience, in my job of getting to interview lots of people and sit across from people and hear their stories, just doing media and doing testimonial style story videos, I've observed a lot of the impact of dads, and there are dads that were there and they show up at the games, but the kids would later on say, like, my dad really wasn't there though. And I just found that I've seen that trend, and I've even people close to me that I know that would say, like, my dad was there, but he wasn't there. And I don't have a connection with him today because he emotionally was not. I think people would say they're emotionally not available. And I think it goes both ways. It's both like it's both like shutting down the possibility of emotion in a home, but then also missing out on the positive emotions too, of great moments and proud moments and happy moments and tearfully joyful moments, like those kind of things too. I think you miss out on that without the ability and the muscle to be okay emoting and paying attention to what you're feeling and just being alive, like you said. Even I was putting Shep down last night before we went to soccer match, and he never cuddles ever. Like he came out of the womb and is like, put me down, And so with Grayson, we got a lot of moments where we got to just hold him and rock him, and many late nights. And I just feel like I bonded with him a lot doing that. And I haven't had that same thing with Shep. And then so last night he's really tired, I think. And so he's finally like, all right, Dad, fine, you can hold me, And, but he held on for a while, and I got tearful when he did that. And it was a really good moment because I just recognized, like, man, similarly with Buck, there was an instance for me that, occurred where I recognized that I wasn't necessarily told, like, emotions are weak. We never really talked about them. They were just neutral. Like, I didn't really know what to do with emotions. And, I had a particular instance and season where I just really needed to figure that out because there were things coming out of me that were not good. And I could feel bad emotion, like bitterness and anger and that kind of stuff building in me. And so started to learn practicing how to feel and how to identify what you're feeling. And one of my favorite quotes on just emotions is from a guy named Brendan Manning. He's one of my favorite authors. And he says, emotions are neither good or bad. They're just indicators of what is going on inside of you. And for me, when I think about emotions in terms of like signals, they become really helpful because I can feel, it's almost like you have like a yellow light pop on, right? Or a yellow flag. And you go like, oh, that's interesting. I'm feeling that thing, and you can recognize what that thing could create in your life before it actually does create it. And you're able to, take a non-judgmental stance to those things, and do something about them before they go down a bad path, or really joyful. This is, oh wow, this is good. Like, when we get together and all of our kids are running around playing, and all of our families, our wives are together, it's like, this is so good. I just want to like sit in it and soak it and just feel it because it's just so life-giving. So I don't even know what the question was. I just kind of ranted there, but
so because you've both now alluded to, like, where does that come from for us as men, that we grow up, or we have this mentality that like we're not supposed to feel, or we have to shut that down? Like, where is that a pervasive thing? Like, where does that come from? Do you have thoughts or opinions on that as men? Why do we feel like we have to
not feel
or push that aside or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's multifaceted. I think culture speaks to that. I think environment speak to that. I think friend groups speak to that. I think the number one influence for me, I would suggest, is family of origin. Like you were saying and I was saying, my mom, I think there's very distinct roles between men and women and mothers and fathers. And I think a mother has a very distinct role in nurturing and developing the emotions of the children. And, there's lots of science. So again, I'm going to be biased. My past, being a pastor is going to come out on the table, but I also think it's like, it's really important to research this. And to get to the, where are our emotions like nurtured? Where, how do they grow? where do we get the stigmas, or where do we get these notions, or where do we start to shut down emotionally, at what age, at what point of development? And so much of that, again, I think is tied to mom and to dad. And so I just think it's like, it's one of my favorite quotes on parenting is Joseph Pierce. I've shared it quite a bit. Is what we are teaches our child far more than what we say, so we must become what we want them to actually become. So it's like, if your dad didn't know how to regulate his emotions, my dad was super explosive. And so to me, I wanted to be the opposite. He everything was on his sleeve. I'm like, I'll never show that. My mom's voice was very much, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up. Like, your life is so much better than all these. And there was always someone that had it worse than us. So I could never she could never validate my emotions. So then ultimately you get stuck. And I think for me, that's where just being on the other side of so many individuals, hearing their stories, talking about the things they experienced, culture, yes, friend groups, yes, trauma, yes, all that is certainly, it's layered. But I think number one is, mom and dad. It's their family of origin. What happened when they were, 2, what happened when they were 5. And even through, there's a lot of research that talks about body language, like just your eyes when your kids are 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. They, there's videos out there to where you can see a mom looking at her children, and a mom's super expressive and your joy and eyes that are lit up, and the child is feels safe and secure, which is this doorway to go, I can share anything with you and I'm safe. I can invert my emotions. I can invert my soul with you, mom, with you, dad, and you are so safe, because they can see it in your body language. And then in that same video, the woman looks away. The little child is look at me, do you see me? And no attention, not being attuned, emotionally connected, not being engaged. I'm just distracted. I'm busy dealing with my own stuff, whatever. And you watch the disposition of the child go from joyful, trusting, and you watch it just go am I safe? Am I okay? Am I okay? And starts to cry. And it had no words, just body language, just eye contact. And it was just, and so, again, it's just another example of so many of the family of origin piece. What did your mom give you? What did your dad give you? What did your mom not give you? What did your dad not give you? And as a result, I think that has far more to do with how we, our ability to share emotion, our ability to be alive, than, anything else. But I think there's a lot of other, John Wayne,
Sure.
Just be tough. I don't know. That's it. Don't show anything.
Definitely a cultural, it feels like it's a double-sided sword. Now there's a cultural movement of, no, you should feel and all this stuff. Yeah. But then when you do, you get totally beat up for it, right? If you get canceled, you get if you show vulnerability, it's be vulnerable. But if you do, you're gonna get punished for it culturally. It's what seems to happen.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's well, I would love to hear in a little bit explore resources, how do we there's the idea of I can emote, but then it's how do I do that well,
right?
Or how do I learn how to behave with my emotions too? I think there's an important piece to that. I'm sure there's guys listening. You referenced kind of your story with your dad. It's
sure.
How do we handle all of this stuff? But what's interesting is I had a moment with our youngest is she's a high emotion. She's super emotional. She's 3, so maybe that's 3-year-old, but she's always been this way. And but she's had moments where, and I don't know where she gets this from. Maybe her mom. I don't know, but she feels so deeply, and there was a crystal clear moment the other day. She clenches her fists. Her teeth are locked, and she's like, "I'm so tired of being." She goes, "I don't want to be angry anymore." She's so angry, that she's angry.
Yeah,
that she has all of this stuff, and it's very clear that's you feel so deeply, and so interesting you tell about the baby and the mother and the just the building of trust with a parent, because in that moment I'm wow, you just let me in. You're not just sharing your anger about, I don't know what she was, who knows, she could be angry about anything, but but you're angry about your anger. Like you don't know what to do right now. And in that was like such a meaningful moment for me. Like I didn't know what to do really, other than just like sit with her, be with her, hold her hand, like just be there. But it's like, wow, how do I protect that connection that I can have? And that to me was like, wow, and then the other day too, same child, she reached out to me and said, hey, you made me sad today because of when you got angry, it made me sad. And, I thought about that. I'm like, wow, like, okay, well, one, I'm showing emotion. I don't know if I'm meant to or not. It is what it is. I'm sure it was a reaction or an impatience or whatever to a 3-year-old. But it was another meaningful moment of like, wow, I'm so glad she trusted me enough to just say like, you made me sad. And now we can connect through that. Now I can work through that with you. Now we can share like, oh, that makes me sad too. And I'm, like explore this connection that we have with our children, and how do I continue? So sitting on the other side of you, it is like, it makes me hopeful here that you're sharing your intent and your hope for your boys. And I'm on this side thinking like, how do I get, I've got a lot of time. Like there's a lot of life to live here. There's going to be chaos. There's going to be behavior. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that we're going to work through together. But how do I protect that? How do I walk through that? And also like continue to teach and lead them when I'm feeling things and navigate that openly with them. I think, I grew up in a home where there were high expectations and the, performance was valued, like high performing, in almost every sense of that word. And so like, I think deeply about that, my family of origin, and like, how do I protect this emotional connection that I have with my children and not allow that to get buried under my expectations for who I want them to be one day. And that is like, it's hard. It's heavy. It's hard.
It could, it could be the motivation too, which is, as you were talking, like I didn't do that. When one of my particular sons is our greatest feeler, just sounds very similar to your daughter. And when he would feel, I would shut that down. He would tell me he's angry. I was like, that's not what men do. And so there was opportunities to where I see today the effects of that. So, he's a man, he's older, he's pursuing life, and he doesn't really know how to feel. And I know part of the reason is because when he was 3, when he was 5, and he would share, and he was our most expressive. He felt the very most. I would determine that as weakness, and that was not so much so like just an outward thing. I just wasn't secure enough. I wasn't, and for me personally, just wasn't like living my true self. It wasn't the truest version of me. And so I wasn't able to meet those moments to really teach him how to feel, to help him regulate those emotions. And those vulnerable moments are some of the most teachable, some of the most impactful moments in our kids' lives. And so to hear you say that, like, that's a great motivator to go, gosh, I wish I could do, I'd give anything to go back to those moments and know what I know today, and just go like, man, I've got to deal with my personal mom issues. I've got to deal with my dad issues, because if I don't, I'm imprisoned, and I'm not able to be present with my children. I'm not able to meet the anger moment, or to meet that moment when they say, Dad, when you're angry, I feel this way. And I'm like, well, just get over it. This is life. This is like adulting. You just need to grow up, and totally be dismissive. And what they experience oftentimes is, it's just not safe to feel. I guess I just can't feel. And they begin to believe that lie. And that just carries with them through life. And so it's like, as a father, as a mother, I think it's really hard to do family of origin work. It's really emotionally painful to do family of origin work. But as a parent, the reward in that is, the more you're alive, the more you're able to meet your son or daughter's, moments like that. The more, you reflect on your dad and performance-based, or your mom performance-based, the more you can say, okay, let me learn from that. That's hard emotionally to engage, but man, it'll help me be more present with my daughters. Yeah. And so, yeah, just kudos to you. That's awesome.
Well,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Nope.
I was just going to say, I'd be curious, as we've got limited time, but I think a couple more questions I feel like it would be helpful for people. Yeah. And, you Buck, you've talked about, I guess, what's at stake if we don't learn to feel and be able to be present with our kids emotionally, right? Mm-hmm. I'd be curious to know if you were to paint a picture of what like an emotionally healthy father looks like, mm-hmm. and like give a couple of examples maybe of just what that, to almost have like a little bit more of a North Star, mm-hmm. to see where am I at on this thing and what could I maybe do differently to reach that. And maybe it's the North Star you've been trying to reach, or you're currently in process. But
well, you should tell me about this standard. Yeah. Well, I'll give you the Christian answer: Jesus.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Just but look at him.
Yeah, but like, what is that? What does it look like? What is it day to day? What are the attributes of a dad who's emotionally healthy?
Yeah, it's just so I think I'll talk about it two ways. One, if experientially, if you're listening or watching, or if you guys have ever been on the other side of an extremely secure person, they're not trying to fix you. They're trying to listen to you. They're trying to discover you. It's a really radically different space to be in. They're not trying to give you 10 things of advice. They're trying to like, hey, what do you think? And how do you feel? And they're like just drawing so much out of you. And when you're on the other side of a person who's extraordinarily secure, they bring life out of you. Yeah. You're like, I cannot wait to receive their phone call. I can't wait to go have coffee with them. I cannot wait for them to ask me to go to lunch, because it just feels like they just bring life out of me. Mm-hmm. It's a result of their security. And they're able to hear things that are hard. Like, what I was reflecting to Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, if there's anything on the other side of me that keeps you from feeling safe, do you think you have the power to tell me? Do you feel like you could tell me? That is really difficult for me to say, because he can bring up a point that if I'm not in an emotionally attuned place, I can feel like a failure as a father. And I can go down a shame spiral and go, well, he's not grateful for all the things I do, and he just doesn't appreciate. And I take one little point of reflection he's given me, and my lack of security sends me down this place to go, okay, fine. And then he's not heard. And so I would say, if you've ever experienced being on the other side of somebody extraordinarily secure, meaning they're living their most true self, they've dealt with a lot of the demons of the past, a lot of the trauma of the past, a lot of the family of origin issues. They've done the work, which is extraordinarily difficult. They bring life out of a friend. They bring life out of their spouse. They bring life out of their staff. They bring life out of their neighbors. They bring life out of their children. And so that's my goal. That's my hope, is to become the truest version of me. And so I think some, practical examples of that is like, if I'm having a hard day at work, instead of stuffing that, I say that. I'm like, man, I'm really stressed about work. I'm nervous about what I'm going to say next Sunday on stage. I really don't, I feel like my insecurities are coming out. I don't know if people are going to like it. I don't know if it's good enough. And I know that's not a good voice to listen to. But, I know I'm kind of quiet tonight. But I just want to let you guys know, that's kind of like, I'm a little bit scared. I have some fear going on. Like, to be able to say that, it frees them. Because like you were saying earlier, so many times kids are going, I don't know my dad. I know him. Like, he puts money, in the bank account. He, puts a roof over the head. He helps clean the garage, or, helps or asks me to clean. But I don't know who he is. And I think those vulnerable moments would be like, hey, I just want to let you know how I'm feeling. Was so difficult, and I would say that's an emotional kind of benchmark to go like, hey, can you just be vulnerable? Vulnerable with your kids, vulnerable, just tell them you're scared. Vulnerable, I think, Brene Brown talks about the power of an apology, like parenting moments. She'll talk about, one of the most powerful moments in the world is to apologize, to be able to own your stuff, to go, I say to my boys all the time, that's my junk. That's my stuff. Hey, don't let my stuff, and don't ever believe I'm perfect. One of my sons is like, Dad, you're perfect. And I'm like, please don't do that, because that means you will feel all the weight of our relationship. If anything's going south in our relationship, you're going to take it because you think I'm perfect, therefore you think you're the issue. But if you think I'm flawed and I have imperfections and I'm willing to admit those imperfections, then you're like, well, he's just human. He needs Jesus, and so do I. It like frees them so much. So to admit your imperfections, to say I'm sorry, to say, man, I just messed up there. I shouldn't have handled it that way. Yeah. And then I think the last one would be just an example is, like you said, with Brandon Manning, paying attention to the emotions. To be able to go, man, I'm really angry right now. Why is that? They just said this one word. They just did this one thing. It's disproportionate. They just knocked off their plate from the table, and spaghetti noodles, yes, are all over the floor. But why do I want to rage on the inside? And a curiosity about those emotions, an ability to pause with those emotions, and an ability maybe to bring those emotions to someone else, perhaps a counselor, perhaps a mentor, and say, man, I just rage on the inside, or I feel so hopeless on the inside when these things happen. And it feels disproportionate to what's actually happening in my life. I think like those kind of things, the ability to go like, hey, I'm just being really curious with my emotions. I'm willing to hear what it's like on the other side of me, and I'm willing to admit my faults. I think those are some of the things I look for. Mm-hmm. And when I'm not doing those, then I'm just going back to the stuff I know didn't help my kids at all.
Yeah. No, that's a lot of good stuff in there for sure.
No, I think that's the spot. I think we should just end it right there, because I think I was wondering like what tools or resources or what do we need to offer people, but offering those tangible 3 things to consider or to work towards is just helpful, challenging, and hopefully inspiring to guys who are listening. As we wrap, would love to hear, we always wrap with what's a takeaway you're walking out of here with today. What's one thing from our conversation that you're going to hold on to? And so just want to make that invitation. Anybody want to share?
I'm a processor, so you don't have to let me go last.
Give
here.
you a second.
Hey, can I share one more thing though? It's just a simple tool I think could be helpful
Sure.
for people. And I feel like it's one of those things. It's been so helpful for me that anytime I get the chance just to be like, I just think one of the most powerful, if you're good, if to experience what Buck's talking about. Right. One of the most helpful things you can do is begin to exercise the muscle of what am I feeling, and just to become aware of it. And for me, somebody told me, hey, wake up every day and just journal this question: what am I feeling? And I did that for years, and I feel like it just exercised this muscle that allowed me to. And I didn't know how to do it at first, and there's a feelings wheel thing, but what I was recommended is instead pull open the emojis on your phone and pick one that you most resonate with, and then find out what that emoji's called, because you'll click on it and you'll be like, oh wait, that's frustration. I'm frustrated, but just to do that every day to begin to exercise that muscle. I just shared that because it was so helpful for me, and so that I just wanted to throw that out there if it's sticky for somebody listening.
No, and I appreciate it. I've gone through exercises similar, but it was actually in a group setting, and we were it was part of like a wellness kind of challenge thing. Like we would do certain disciplines every week or every day, but one of them was a check-in with each other, not just to say what did I do well or not do well, but also like what am I? A point of gratitude and a point of like I'm feeling. I am feeling blank, fill in the blank. And surprisingly, not hard for me to do an exercise, to read, to meditate, to do any of the other things. But to write that text was arguably the hardest thing for me to do every day during that challenge. And I think it speaks towards like it's so much easier. It feels easier to just try to numb or to be busy, to work on other things that we can do with our hands or our minds, but to pay attention to what's going on in our soul and body is deep work that I think will produce some really cool fruit, not just for ourselves, but for the people in our lives and our families. And I also just wanted to say, so this is my takeaway from today. I appreciate the point you make, Buck, about just the way that when we live from a place of security, then the impact that has on all of the people around us. Like if we look at, as men, so as fathers, like I was coming into today thinking like, why do we need to have this conversation? And it's so important. It's not just, fatherhood is like ground zero of what it looks like for men to lead. Like we have to be in our homes with these relationships for hopefully the rest of our lives and some sort of relationship with our children. But culturally, it's like it is so built up like we need to be leaders. You need to lead at work, or you're a boss, you're an entrepreneur, you're a pastor, you're doing all of these things, and it is so impressive to be healthy leaders. And yet we try to do that from a place of authority or a place of like performance or showmanship or whatever, but the most impactful people that we want to go follow or be around are the people who are just secure and curious and interesting and bring out this peace within us. And that comes from a place of security and an emotional health and intelligence, wellness, and awareness. And so I think for me, that is like just, it's like just cementing this idea of like that aspiration and that goal of like, yeah, I do want to do the work to live from a place of just security, to not just, and then hope, with the hope and the intent that I can model that for my children. And the impact that I get to have is like, that's so incredible. That's so refreshing, rewarding. I'm hopeful for it. So that's what I'm walking. I just really appreciate your storytelling there, and walking away, taking that with me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would feel the same. I just feel motivated. I think my big takeaway is, I've shared a little bit about my journey. And I just want to be very clear. I haven't arrived. I am still very much on this journey of waking up. It's very much on this journey of emotional maturity, very much on this journey of self-awareness, very much on this journey of like security, emotional security. It's one of the greatest gifts I could give you guys. It's one of the greatest gifts I could give my family, my friends, those that I pastor, and my children. And so I just feel that much more motivated from this conversation to, keep doing the hard work. It's hard, but it's worth it.
I had time to think about mine. Thank you, guys. Mine is, I think, just hearing you guys talk about how, if you're even you using the example of Lucy is like reflecting something. I often, when Grayson reflects an emotion to me, I feel like I need to fix it, like so that we can move forward with our day. Like I think I'm in a rush, or like I want to get to the next thing, and oftentimes I forget to I just need to let him be alive, as a little 2-year-old, as he learns what emotions are and what they feel like, and not feel like, oh, this is an inconvenience to the day. Like, okay, he's sad. I'm going to have to put down what I was doing and sit in this with him, and, a little 2-year-old sadness, help him just, I don't know. I mean, not like help him navigate it, or help him fix it. That's like my go-to thing. I just almost said it, but just sit there with him. I'm like, buddy, I'm sorry you're sad. Yeah. We watch movies, and he'll see like the person get separated from mom and dad, and he's like, "Here's mommy and daddy. I'm so sad." And like oftentimes I'm like, "Yeah, but it's gonna get better." Like, no, like he's okay. It's sad. So that's my takeaway. Just being able to sit in that a little more.
Yeah. And I know we keep landing the plane and going poof, poof, poof. It's like, hey, this podcast will end, I promise.
Yeah.
But just one quick resource that came to mind when you said that is there's a book called Nonviolent Communication. And it's just great because it's full circle. It's here's what I need. I'm going to express what I see. I'm going to express what it makes me feel. I'm going to express, what I need. And vice versa. Here's what I, kind of see is going on with you. Potentially, there's no judgment here. But and I'm guessing here's what you're feeling, and then I'm asking the question of what is it that you really need? Like that's the thing that I'm most curious about is behind all the emotion, behind all what is it you need? And so it's a great resource to kind of continue to, from a parenting perspective, from a friend perspective, leadership perspective, how do emotions play out in our kids' lives? How do emotions play out in my lives? How do we emote those? How do we share those? And it's a really good resource.
Awesome. Thanks. That's great.
All right, guys. Well, appreciate your time. Hope everyone who's listening, watching, maybe you have a takeaway too. And we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey, dads, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Kyle and I are honored to have you, and we hope you took something away from the episode. Wherever you are, we appreciate your support. So go ahead, hit that like button, the subscribe button, or whatever button is in front of you with the technology you're using. And if you wouldn't mind to let us know that you're actually tuning into this podcast, we would love it if you would text the word Upshot to 97000. That won't just let us know that you're listening, but it's also a way that you can subscribe to any updates or resources that we will have coming down the pipeline in the future. Again, guys, thanks for tuning in. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we can't wait to see you next time.